The night I let her sleep on my couch, I thought I was helping a stranger out of the rain. I didn't know she had walked into my life carrying a secret big enough to tear open everything I thought I had buried. And by the time I realized she hadn't come to Seattle by accident, it was already too late. My name is Nathan Wells. I was 34 that winter. I lived alone in a small apartment in Capitol Hill. 3rd floor, old brick building, narrow hallway, floors that creaked in the cold. I worked nights as an audio editor for a local radio station. It was the kind of job that made you feel invisible. I spent hours cleaning up other people's voices, while barely speaking in my own life. Most nights, I left work after midnight. I'd stop at the same 24-hour pharmacy on Pine Street for black coffee and aspirin I never really needed. Then I'd walk home through wet streets and neon reflections and pretend I liked being alone. The truth was, I had gotten used to the silence, not because I wanted to, because 2 years earlier, my wife Elena had left me with no real explanation. No fight, no big scene, no broken dishes, just distance, then papers, then a short message that said she couldn't do this anymore. I read that sentence so many times I stopped seeing words. It just became a bruise. After that, I packed half her things into boxes I never mailed, left one lamp she loved in the corner of the living room, turned one framed photo face down and never moved it again. That was my life. Work, coffee, rain, sleep. And then Reese showed up. It was just after 1 in the morning. The wind was pushing cold rain sideways, and she was standing under the pharmacy awning in a dark green coat, holding a dead phone in one hand and a small overnight bag in the other. She looked calm, but only from a distance. Up close, I could see it in her eyes. That tight, tired look people get when they've been trying not to panic for too long. She asked if I knew where she could get a cab that late. I told her ride shares were usually easier. She gave me a weak smile and lifted her phone. "Dead," she said, "and my hotel says they gave away my room." There was something about the way she said it. Not dramatic, not helpless, just worn down. I offered to let her charge her phone in the pharmacy lobby. She thanked me. We sat by the front window while her phone came back to life. Her name was Reese Morgan. She was 31. She said she was in town for a floral design expo at the convention center. Her hotel had messed up her reservation because of some booking glitch, and every affordable place nearby was full. She called 2 hotels, then 3, then 4. Nothing. The storm got worse, and before I could overthink it, I heard myself say, "I've got a couch, 1 night, no pressure." She looked at me for a long second. Most people would have said no. She didn't. She just nodded once and said, "Okay, 1 night." That was my first mistake. At first, it felt harmless. I gave her a towel, a blanket, one of those extra toothbrushes dentists hand out like apology gifts. She stood in my living room like she was afraid to touch anything. Then she noticed the yellow lamp in the corner. "You kept it," she said softly. I frowned. "Kept what?" She blinked, like she had said too much. "The lamp," she said. "It just seems like something people usually replace." I laughed it off, but I remembered it later, because she was right. It was the one thing in that room that didn't match anything else. Elena had bought it from a thrift store in Portland on our first anniversary. I hated it, and still, I kept it. The next morning, I expected Reese to be gone before I woke up. She wasn't. She was in the kitchen making coffee like she had been there before. Not in a rude way, just comfortable. Too comfortable. She apologized right away. Said every hotel she called was still booked, and her conference badge didn't activate until noon, so she was stuck for a few more hours. I should have said that was enough. Instead, I told her she could leave her bag there until she figured something out. She smiled. That smile should have warned me. It wasn't seductive. It wasn't manipulative. It was worse. It was relieved. Over the next 2 days, Reese kept finding reasons to come back. At first, it was simple. She forgot her charger, then her tote bag. Then it started raining again, and I told her to wait it out. By the 3rd night, she was eating takeout with me on the floor because my table still wobbled, and I'd never fixed it. She asked questions in a soft voice, about my job, about Seattle, about why I worked nights. Then, eventually, about Elena. I didn't say much. Most people stopped asking after they saw my face change. Reese didn't. She listened carefully, too carefully. When I told her my wife had left without really explaining why, Reese looked down at her food and said, "Maybe she thought leaving was kinder." That line hit me wrong. Kinder for who? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Sometimes people make choices they think will hurt less later." I remember staring at her after that, because it didn't sound like a guess, it sounded like a defense. That was the first real crack. After that, I started noticing little things. She stared too long at the bookshelf where I kept the face-down photo. One night, I came home and found it turned over. Not fully, just enough that Elena's smile was showing in the edge of the frame. Reese said she had been dusting and didn't realize. I believed her for about 10 seconds. Another time, we were walking back from a diner near Broadway when a song drifted out from a passing car. An old Mazzy Star track. Elena used to play it on Sunday mornings. Reese started humming along, then she caught herself and went quiet. "How do you know that song?" I asked. She shrugged. "My mom liked it." Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. Then came the moment I couldn't shake. I was in the shower one morning when I heard the floorboard outside my bedroom creak. Just one. I got out, dried off fast, and found Reese standing near my dresser. Not touching anything, just standing there. My ring box sat on top, closed, untouched. "What are you doing?" I asked. She looked almost guilty. "I was looking for a pen," she said. There were no pens in my bedroom. She knew that. I knew that. But neither of us said it. That night, after she fell asleep on the couch, I stood in the dark hallway and realized something I didn't want to admit. I was beginning to look forward to hearing her in my apartment. Her footsteps, her voice, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. And that scared me more than the strange things, because whatever was going on, I was already in it. By the end of the week, Reese still hadn't left. She had started saying things like, "Just until Friday," or "Just one more night." And somehow, I always said yes. Part of me wanted to believe it was because I was being kind. That wasn't the truth. The truth was, she made the apartment feel alive again. The silence broke around her. The windows looked warmer at night. The kitchen light stayed on longer. I started buying better coffee. One Friday, I came home early and found her asleep on the couch with a book open on her chest. My book. A collection of essays Elena had given me years ago. Reese woke up fast and sat up like she'd been caught stealing. "Sorry," she said. "I couldn't sleep." "It's fine," I told her. But when I took the book from her, a folded paper slipped out. It was old, soft at the edges, and on the front, in handwriting I knew immediately, was my name. Nathan. I felt all the air leave my body. Reese grabbed it before I could open it. Too fast. Way too fast. "What is that?" I asked. She stood up. "It's nothing." "That's Elena's handwriting." She looked at me, and for the first time since I met her, I saw real fear. Not fear of me, fear of the truth. She tucked the note into her coat pocket and said, "You're tired. We should talk later." "No," I said. "We talk now." But she didn't. She picked up her bag, said she needed air, and walked out before I could stop her. I spent the next 30 minutes standing in the middle of my apartment like a man who had just found out his walls were made of paper. When she came back, she acted calm. Too calm. She said the note wasn't what I thought it was. She said Elena's name had come up because she had known someone from Santa Fe who knew someone who knew her. It was nonsense. Thin, shaky nonsense. And I let her say it anyway because I wanted to hear where the lie ended. But she wouldn't go all the way. That was when suspicion turned into obsession. I stopped sleeping. I started watching her. The next day, I told her I had a late shift. I didn't. I waited across the street in my truck until she came out of my building. She looked different when she thought no one was watching. Faster, heavier somehow. like she wasn't lost anymore. I followed her through downtown traffic, keeping 3 cars between us. She drove to the north end of the city and parked outside a small mailbox store next to a dry cleaner. She went inside for maybe 6 minutes. When she came back out, she was carrying a small cedar box. I knew that box, or at least, I knew the kind. Elena used to keep letters in boxes like that. Receipts, photos, ticket stubs, pieces of life that seemed too small to matter until they were all you had left. Reese sat in her car for a while after that, just holding the box. Then she cried. I could see it even from across the street. She cried like someone who had run out of ways to delay the inevitable. And suddenly, I wasn't angry, I was terrified. Because whatever she had brought into my life, it was bigger than a lie. Investigation phase. That evening, she came back to my apartment with red eyes and a paper bag of Thai food like nothing had happened. I let her set the food down. Then I asked one question. Who are you really? She froze. Not dramatic, not movie-like, just completely still. I told her I had followed her. I told her I saw the box. For a second, I thought she might lie again. Instead, she sat on the edge of the couch and pressed both hands together so tightly, her knuckles turned white. I was going to tell you, she said. Were you? I asked. She looked at me. I came here because of Elena. Hearing her say my ex-wife's name in my living room felt wrong, like hearing a ghost clear its throat. I didn't sit down. I couldn't. Reese swallowed hard. I met her in New Mexico, she said, almost a year ago. I stared at her. Elena had mailed the divorce papers from Santa Fe. That much I knew. After that, nothing. Reese kept going. She was in treatment out there. We were both staying at the same support house for a while. My sister was sick. Elena was there alone. My chest tightened. Treatment for what? Reese closed her eyes for 1 second. Cancer. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes the body rejects pain before the mind can. No, I said. No. She would have told me. Reese shook her head slowly. She didn't want to. That sentence hit harder than anything else. I stepped back like she had pushed me. Reese opened the cedar box and set it on the coffee table between us. Inside were letters, photos, a hospital bracelet, a small pressed flower, and on top, a voice recorder. Everything in me started shaking. She asked me to bring these to you, Reese said, but only if I thought you were ready to hear the truth. I looked at her like I had never seen her before. So this was what? I said. A test? No. A performance? No. Then what was it, Reese? Her voice broke. I came here planning to knock on your door, hand you the box, and leave. That was the plan. 1 hour, maybe less. She looked down. Then the hotel story became real after I missed my train, and I saw an opening. I know that sounds awful. It sounds insane. I know. Why stay? She took a breath that trembled. Because Elena talked about you like you were the great love of her life, and also the one person she could never face again. I didn't understand how both could be true. I wanted to know who you were before I gave you the last pieces of her. I said nothing. There wasn't a word big enough. Reese wiped at her eyes. She wasn't trying to punish you, she said. She was trying to protect you. At least, that's what she told herself. I finally sat down because my legs stopped feeling reliable. Reese told me everything in fragments. Elena had found out she was sick not long after our last failed round of IVF. She had already watched our marriage bend under money, grief, and disappointment. She said I kept trying to hold everything together while she felt herself disappearing. Then came the diagnosis, then the fear, then the choice. She left before I could watch her get smaller, before I could turn from her husband into her caretaker, before love became a room with machines in it. I hated hearing it, because part of me understood it, and part of me never would. She made me promise, Reese said softly, not just to give you the letters, to make sure you didn't spend the rest of your life believing she stopped loving you. That was the moment it all shifted, not because the pain got smaller, because it finally had a shape. Big twist. I picked up the first letter with hands that barely worked. The paper was thin and familiar. Elena always wrote in blue ink. Always. The letter started like this. Nathan, if this reached you, it means I ran out of time, or courage. I had to stop there. I couldn't breathe. Reese stood up like she was about to leave, but I told her not to. I don't know why. Maybe because if she left, I'd have to become the version of myself that lived after hearing the truth. So I read. And line by line, the woman I thought had abandoned me came back to life in the saddest way possible. Elena wrote that she had not left because she didn't love me. She left because she did. She wrote that after the miscarriages, after the treatments, after the debt, she saw how tired I had become even when I smiled for her. She wrote that when the doctors told her the cancer had likely been there longer than anyone knew, she made a choice I would have fought with everything in me. She chose to become a memory before she became a slow goodbye. She thought that was mercy. She was wrong, but she believed it. The last letter was the one that broke me. In it, she wrote that if I was reading this, then someone named Reese had decided I was still worth trusting. I looked up so fast my vision blurred. Reese was crying silently by the window. Elena had written about her too, about meeting a stranger in a support house who didn't ask for pretty answers, about long nights in shared kitchens, about telling Reese the story of our first apartment, our awful yellow lamp, the way I lined up coffee mugs by color without realizing I did it. That was how Reese knew. That was how she knew everything. Not because she had been watching me before that week, because Elena had loved me out loud, even after she was gone from my life. And Reese had carried those stories all the way to my door. That was the twist I never saw coming. The stranger on my couch had not come to take something from me. She had come to return the truth. And somehow, in the middle of all that deception, she had become real to me too. That was the part that hurt in a different way, because now I knew why she came, and I had no idea if anything between us had been honest. I asked her the question anyway. Did you ever actually care about me? Or was all of this just Elena? Reese turned around slowly. Her face looked wrecked. At first, she said, I cared because she did. She took a shaky breath. But that changed, and that's the part I'll probably feel guilty about for a long time. The room went quiet. I should have told you sooner, she whispered. I know that. Every day I stayed, it got harder, because you weren't the man I expected. You were lonelier, kinder, more broken, more human, and I started dreading the moment you'd look at me like this. Like what? Like I'm the reason something ended. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, but in that moment, I didn't know what she was to me. Messenger, liar, witness, maybe all three. So I just sat there, surrounded by letters from a dead marriage and feelings I couldn't name. And Reese, the woman I thought had only needed one night, had been carrying a goodbye for almost a year. Emotional ending. She left before sunrise. No argument, no dramatic speech. She folded the blanket she'd been using on the couch, set my spare key on the counter, wrote one line on a sticky note. I'm sorry I arrived as a secret. Then she was gone. For 3 days, I barely left the apartment. I read every letter. I listened to Elena's voice on the recorder until I could hear the smile in words that were trying not to sound afraid. She told me she loved me, again and again. She told me I was never the reason she left. She told me if I ever hated her, she understood. But she hoped one day I would remember her without turning cold inside. That part took longer, a lot longer. Grief is strange when it shows up late. It doesn't knock, it rearranges the furniture. A week after Reese left, I found a brochure tucked inside one of Elena's letters. A greenhouse on the edge of the city, seasonal floral work, volunteer grief workshops on Sundays. Reese's name was written on the back in Elena's handwriting. Maybe it was meant for me to find. Maybe not. I drove there on a grey afternoon with no real plan. The greenhouse smelled like wet soil and eucalyptus. For a second, I almost turned around. Then I saw her. Reese was standing at a work table in a denim jacket, trimming dead leaves from white roses. No makeup. Hair tied back. No mystery this time. Just a woman who looked tired when she saw me. I walked up slowly. Neither of us spoke right away. Then I held up the sticky note she'd left. I think you forgot to finish this apology, I said. She gave a small, sad laugh. That bad, huh? Pretty bad. She nodded. Fair. I looked around at the flowers, at the soft light through the glass, at her hands. Then I said the truest thing I had managed in years. She didn't stop loving me. Reese's eyes filled instantly. No, she said. She didn't. I swallowed hard. And you should have told me the truth sooner. I know. I let that sit between us. Then I added, but I'm still glad you came. That surprised her. Maybe it surprised me too. Because the pain was real. The anger was real. But so was the fact that she had walked straight into a wrecked part of my life and handed me back something I thought I'd never get. Not Elena, not the marriage, just the truth. And sometimes the truth is the only thing that keeps grief from turning poisonous. Reese stepped closer, just a little. "What happens now?" she asked. I looked at her for a long moment, at the woman who had entered my life through a storm, who had slept on my couch under a lie, who had broken my heart open, and maybe saved some part of it too. Then I said, "Now, I don't confuse pain with the end of the story." She smiled through tears, small, real, tired. I asked if she wanted to get coffee after her shift. She tilted her head. "Just coffee?" I nodded. "Just coffee," I said. "No secrets, no one-night stories, no other plans." She laughed softly, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt something that didn't disappear the second I touched it. Not closure, not peace, just the quiet beginning of something honest. And after everything that came before, that was enough.